Hi, I'm Brick Road, and welcome back to another tier list video, a Sabkadif, if you will. I just got a quick one, just a short and sweet one. Somebody recommended that I rank the Mega Man Classic games, all the classic Mega Man games, which, for the first thing to get off my chest here, like, the word classic when it comes to Mega Man has multiple meanings. Like, are we just talking like the original NES games? Are we talking all of the games that have the original Mega Man character as opposed to like X or the Battle Network guy or whatever? Like, there's no one definitive way to like classify the Mega Man games down into just the classic series without having to play nonsense like Mega Man Soccer, which I'm not willing to do. But I do have all the games here from 1 to 11, the main Mega Man games, the classic games, and I've got some odds and ends, some spin-offs, and a couple of fan games that I think deserve recognition. Yeah, let's just jump into this. The first one is going to be Mega Man 1, the original Mega Man, the game that started it all. You know what? I can't put Mega Man 1 any higher than a C tier. And here's the thing. If Mega Man had come out, which it did, I mean, that's the rumor, it did come out at some point. If it had come out and had never gotten any sequels, if the only Mega Man game that had ever been released was just this one on the NES, I don't think it would be remembered that fondly. It's janky, it's unpolished, the boss fights feel really unfair sometimes, they don't feel like you can really react well in the fights. Some of the stages just have bad gimmicks. You have the magnet beam that you make your own platform. It was clear that like a lot of good ideas were on display. The creative team behind Mega Man had a lot of things that they wanted to convey in a video game form. So a lot of creativity on display, a lot of novelty in the original Mega Man, but they had to explore the idea further in order to get to the point where the series was really, really good. And going back to that first game, it's a slog. It's rough. When you've got things like the Iceman stage that just knocks you in the pit for no reason, there's a jump in Gutsman's level that's basically impossible unless you're standing on a platform in such a way that it doesn't look natural if you're not already fanatical about Mega Man. If you just have, I'll have one foot on this platform, otherwise I don't have enough pixels to make the jump. The game's full of a lot of that kind of stuff. So the story goes, I've never heard the verification of this, but the story goes that the creators of Mega Man, like in their own kind of spare time, still working on other projects at Capcom, put together Mega Man 2, where they actually got to realize a lot of those creative ideas from the first game. In a lot of ways, Mega Man 2 is like where the series starts, and it is, or at least was, there was a period of time in the late 90s, early aughts maybe, as we were leaving from like the N64 era and going into beyond, where Mega Man 2 was like the favorite game of the series, and it's good. I love Mega Man 2. I'm gonna put it probably at the top of B tier. They did make an excellent game. It's not as janky, like there's not this permeating membrane of jank over the whole game like there is in the original Mega Man. But there's a couple of spots in Mega Man 2 that when I sit down to play it, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to do that spot though. The wall cannon fight in Wily's Fortress that you need crash bombs for comes immediately to mind. There's some silly stuff like when you win that fight, you immediately go into the Robot Master refights, except now you don't have any crash bombs, so you can't use those on the Robot Masters that are weak to it. Robot Master weaknesses, they don't form a chain at all, and half of the Robot Masters are just weak to the Metal Blade. The Metal Blade is everybody's favorite weapon because it is superhumanly good. It's like too good to be in a Mega Man game. So it does have some issues like that. It's not one that I want to pick up and replay a lot. So, Brick Road, what is a Mega Man game that you want to pick up and replay a lot? Well, that's Mega Man 3. and I'm immediately dropping Mega Man 3 in the S tier. Immediately. This is the first Mega Man game I played when it was brand new in 1990, so I've basically been playing this game all of my life, and this is the game where they finally got it polished really well. There's still some jank, but it's in that kind of retro NES style. All games of that era have this kind of jank, and not, oh, they designed this boss fight and then didn't playtest it properly kind of jank. There is one very famous soft lock in this game that I didn't know about until I was well into adulthood, because you kind of have to go out of your way to get into it. But it's pretty funny in retrospect. Some people feel like Mega Man 3 is too long. You play the Doc Robot stages, and then you go to the Wily stages. But honestly, I think the game is the perfect length. You've got like 8 regular-sized Robot Master stages, then you've got the Doc Robot stages, and then you've got a couple of short Fortress stages with big, bombastic boss battles. Really cool game, and there's throwbacks in this game, because they must have thought, like, this is the end of the Mega Man series. Like, we've made a trilogy, and those days, like, very few games got to the level of trilogy. So there are really cool callbacks to the previous 2 Mega Man games in this game, which I really appreciate. Has some of my favorite Robot Masters. I'm always partial to Snake Man, personally. So this is where I came into the series. I started playing with Mega Man 3. The slide felt so natural to me that when we went back and played Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 1, like, you really, really miss it. Like, it really feels like you should be able to slide under Metal Man's saw blades, and you just can't. The next year, though, was the first year that a Mega Man game came out that we ended up buying, and it became a yearly occurrence. You just buy the new Mega Man game each year. So the next one is Mega Man 4, and 4 is okay. I'm going to put it in the B tier behind Mega Man 2, and I just think that 2 and 3 are just more fun to play through. 4 has a couple of kind of dodgy Robot Master fights. I guess 3 did as well, but 4... I think 4 is the first game in the series that has a Robot Master that they kind of intended you to start with. Like, you're supposed to start with Toadman. Toadman is so ridiculously easy in this game that it's basically impossible to lose to him. And it's the game that introduced the Mega Buster, which is cool. It feels okay when you're playing through levels. It's nice to have that charge shot. But the Mega Buster kind of devalues the Robot Master weapons, where in Mega Man 1, 2, and 3, yeah, there were a couple of duds, but when you got into the boss fight, like, it was really exciting to try out all your different weapons, to figure out what the boss was weak to, because some of those bosses had patterns that you weren't going to defeat them if you didn't have the correct weapon. Well, starting in Mega Man 4, now you walk into a Robot Master room, and you can pretty much always beat them with just the Mega Buster. So they started kind of paring down the Robot Master fights to ensure that they were all fair with the Mega Buster, which is fine, but it devalues the Robot Master weapons, and you can tell from this point in the series forward, the Master weapons do hit a lull. They become a little less creative. Mega Man 4's set of weapons is basically a kind of greatest hits from the previous 3 games. Like, you've got a shield weapon, you've got a time stop weapon, you've got an exploding drill weapon, you've got a full screen kill, which is kind of fun to use. But it's not a game where you're going to be experiencing with the weapons going all the way through. Also, it takes a long time for boss energy to fill up. For some reason in this game, it feels like where Mega Man 3, the boss energy filled up real quick, Mega Man 4 filled up very, very slowly. It's something that bothers me when it goes every time I go back and play this game. The other thing Mega Man 4 introduces is this conceit that Dr. Wily is not your villain. You're fighting some other villain, but then after you beat that villain, they just reveal that it's Dr. Wily. I think they got away with it in Mega Man 4, but they started doing it in like every single game at this point. And it didn't fool any of us, I guess is what I'm saying. Mega Man 5, though. Mega Man 5, I think, is probably, if I'm looking at it objectively, air quotes, yeah, objectively, I know it's a bad word, but I think 5 might be the most solid game in the original 6 NES series. And I'm going to drop it in the A tier. Not sure where it's going to end up falling on the A tier, because I don't know what else is going to go here just yet. But Mega Man 5, at this point in the series, they had polished it to a mirror sheen. It still has the situation where the Robot Master fights feel like they were developed for the Mega Buster and not your Master Weapons. But I think 5 has a more fun set of Master Weapons overall. I also think it has a really fun set of Fortress stages. I have no difficulty playing through this game, just picking up and playing it, start to finish. I can't think of a single spot that, I don't want to fight that boss. One of the cool features of Mega Man 5 is in the first Fortress of 2, before you learn Dr. Wily is really behind everything. You have to fight a series of Dark Man robots. And it's the same robot, but with like different capabilities each time you fight him. And then at the very end of the first Fortress, you have to fight a version of the Dark Man robot that has all of the previous capabilities. So you kind of like build him up over a period of time. I thought that was really cool. But in general, Mega Man 5 just has all of the things that I want from this era of Mega Man. It has a slide, it has a good set of stages, it has some really banger music, it has some pretty fun boss fights, it has a couple of lame boss fights too, but that's to be expected. It has Rush and all of Rush's basic functionality, it has E-Tanks, it does introduce the concept of like hunting for items. Mega Man 4 had a couple of items you had to hunt for. Mega Man 5, you have to spell out the word Mega Man 5 and then you get a little bonus. So we're starting to play with concepts of like searching through stages to make sure you find all the bonuses, which is something I really like about the Mega Man series. But this is still pretty early in the series. We haven't started getting off the rails with weird experiments in lots of different directions yet. That kind of thing starts in Mega Man 6. But before we get into Mega Man 6, because they've been releasing all these games on the NES, but they've also been releasing a bunch of games on the Game Boy. There was Mega Man and Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 4 on the Game Boy. And this might sound weird coming off of the like Nintendo Wii / DS era. Like we came on into the Switch, and is the Switch a handheld? Is it not a handheld? Nobody knows. We didn't ask Santa Claus. But back in the day, back in the Game Boy day, in the 1990s, everybody understood that they would make a game and then they would make the Game Boy version of that game. And it was always understood that the Game Boy version was going to be a pared down version of the real game. There wasn't this sense of, like in the DS era, where a game could come out on the DS or the 3DS and be a series in its own right and stand up to the games being released on the home consoles at the time. So when you bought a Mega Man game for the Game Boy, like you were just getting the NES game with the same monsters, the same Robot Masters. I think they offset them. Like the first Game Boy game had a few Robot Masters from 1 and a few Robot Masters from 2. And then the second one had the rest of the Robot Masters from 2 and then a few of the Robot Masters from 3. So they kind of split them up. But they did that until Mega Man 5 for the Game Boy, which is the most recent of them and the rarest, I think. This game is very hard to find, is my understanding. This game is the only Game Boy game that I've included on this list, because first of all, I haven't played most of them in many, many years, and I wasn't going to play them all for the purposes of this list. They were all just going to run together in my head, and I don't want to have 4 pea-green games kicking around up there. But Mega Man 5 has a unique set of Robot Masters that don't appear in any other games. They're actually named after the planets in the solar system, which is kind of cool. You still fight them in 2 batches of 4 instead of having all 8 up front. It has some other conventions from the Game Boy games. For example, the Game Boy games introduced the shop where you collected... They weren't bolts, what were they? They were something else. But you could collect whatever bolts were back then and then buy items in the shop. However, for the game's innovation, they were trying really hard to make a Game Boy game feel unique, but this was around the time where like they were going to pivot over to Mega Man X, and I really, in good conscience, can't put this game any higher than C tier. I definitely think it's better than the original Mega Man, but playing it's still a Game Boy game, so you've got this really cramped screen. There's no color information, so Mega Man doesn't change colors. You lose that kind of detail in the Robot Master sprites, which for me is always one of the most fun parts of a Mega Man game, is being introduced to all the new Robot Masters, right? Also in this game, you don't get a Mega Buster. Instead, you charge up your shot, and then Mega Man like fires off his fists, and it just feels bad. I don't like it. I really wish the game just had a standard Mega Buster. That said, I mean, it's a C-tier game. If you were going on a long road trip, it was probably worth playing, but as soon as you got home, like, there's nothing to recommend plugging it into your Super Game Boy, I don't think. The last NES game is Mega Man 6. This one's interesting because it wasn't published by Capcom. At least in America, it was published by Nintendo, because at this point, Capcom was developing the Mega Man X series and moving on. 6 is real solid, though. I actually really enjoy 6. I'm going to go ahead and put it up in the A tier. And that's a hard place because I'm looking at it sitting above Mega Man 2, and in my heart of hearts, I know that that's right, because 6 is the better game. But at the same time, the reason 2 is the worst game is because they hadn't had 5 previous games plus all the Game Boy stuff laying the groundwork for it. What I mean by that is 6 doesn't break any new ground. It's just another Mega Man game. Really good quality, fun boss fights, the Mega Buster feels fine. They played around with Rush too much. Instead of getting like the Rush bounce and like the Rush skateboard or whatever, you get like a jetpack and like a power punch, and when you put, like, he wears Rush like a suit. And if you're like wearing the Power Punch suit, you can't slide, and losing your slide is a big deal. So there's a little bit of jank in swapping the menu back and forth. But I have no problem picking up Mega Man 6 and playing it. And that's kind of the delineation here between A and B, I guess, is there a part of this game that I dread playing when I sit down and replaying it? In Mega Man 3 and 5 and 6, there's not. The whole game's pretty good. Mega Man 2 and 4 and 1, yeah, for sure. And then that's it. We're leaving the NES behind now. We're going into the SNES era. I think they released X1 and X2 before going back to the classic series and releasing Mega Man 7. And, oh, woof. Yeah, 7's rough. Part of the problem is that you're going to inevitably compare 7 to 5 and 6, the most recent games in the series. What is Mega Man 7 going to do to separate itself from those two games? And what they chose was make Mega Man's sprite bigger, and that's kind of it. But the other hand is, this game also has to separate itself from Mega Man X and Mega Man X2, both of which are outstanding games that I would definitely place in the S tier on this chart. And 7 feels like a big step backward, because you can't dash, you can't wall kick, the level design doesn't feel as fun. The sound design in this game is really off. I do not like the sound of your shots connecting with enemies, or the sound of the Mega Buster charging up, or even the jumps connecting with the ground. Every sound effect in this game just feels bad. And it's such a chore to play. There's so many levels in this game that I just hate. They're built around these level gimmicks. Like Burst Man is a terrible level. Shade Man's level is just a slog. Turbo Man's level has some really unfair stuff in it. And a couple of the boss fights are good, but a couple of the boss fights are just really awful. Slash Man is a terrible boss fight. Everybody hates that fight with the ketchup bombs. Shade Man doesn't feel great. Freeze Man and Spring Man, I think, are two of the legitimately most fun to fight bosses in the classic series, and that's why I'm not going to play 7 in the F tier. 7 also has a notoriously difficult final boss. I mean, like an order of magnitude more difficult to dodge or to recognize a pattern than anything else in the game. It's really remarkable how awful that fight is. I don't think I've ever completed Mega Man 7 for the Super Nintendo without using all of my energy tanks on that final boss fight. Just eat the hit and drink an E-tank afterward. It just feels bad. That was it for the SNES. They moved on to Mega Man X3, and then by that point the PlayStation had come out. So for Mega Man 10th anniversary, we have Mega Man 8. It's rough. It's almost a lot of the same criticisms, first of all, as Mega Man 7. But Mega Man 8, does it have any bad boss fights? I don't think it has any terrible boss fights. Search Man is kind of gross. And Tengu Man is pretty dumb if you're trying to use his weakness against him. What really kills Mega Man 8 is just the unfun levels. The jump, slide levels, which are basically just trial and error. They don't feel like they belong in the same zip code as a Mega Man game. You've got the Gradius levels, which I don't even understand the thought process there. The whole point of Mega Man is he's jump and shoot mans, and he's got all the different guns, and he changes colors, and so we're just going to lock him onto a Force Rush Jet segment and just turn it into Gradius for 2 levels out of the game for no reason. You do get a soccer ball in the beginning of the game. You get the Mega Ball, which is fun to play with, but the rush functionality is pared way back. You don't get E-tanks. It's just not as user-friendly a game as the NES ones. And I almost feel like it's over-polished. And that's even before you get into the voice acting of the era. Mega Man has the high, squeaky dog chew toy voice in this game. It's just not very pleasant to replay. It is, however, considerably better than 7. I think that's a fair placement in the D tier. 7 and 8, that's where they belong. At this point, though, they've already released Mega Man 8 for the PlayStation, but the Super Nintendo was like in its last legs at this point, and I have to assume they wanted to do like a version of Mega Man 8 on the SNES, like a dual release thing. Like maybe they could have if they just cut out all the voice acting and the terrible cartoon cutscenes, but what actually ended up getting released on the Super Nintendo was a game called Mega Man in Bass. It was a Japan-only game for years and years and years until it eventually got ported to the Game Boy Advance. I haven't played the Game Boy Advance version. I'm going to assume that it's just the Super Famicom version on the Game Boy Advance. One benefit 7 has over 8 is that the graphics do look a little better. Mega Man's sprite looks more like Mega Man. In Mega Man 8, he just looks really derpy and silly. And unfortunately, that's the sprite they used in Mega Man in Bass. The big gimmick of this game is that you can play either as Mega Man with his standard slide and charge shot, or you can play as Bass, who has an aimable, like machine gun spray, like a Contra kind of thing, and he has a double jump. And this whole game is designed around Bass as the playable character, to the point where it almost feels like they were going to release like a side game where you play as Bass, and at the very last second, they're like, oh, let's just put Mega Man in too. People won't buy it if they can't play as Mega Man. There's a lot of the level design in this game really feels just awful if you don't have access to that double jump. I do like the treasure hunt aspect of this game, where you have to like hunt down CDs that have like boss information, and you can find boss information for like all of the Robot Masters from all the previous games. But no, this game, every level is terrible and every boss fight is terrible. It is just, it's the worst Mega Man classic game surely on this list, and probably ever released. This is an F tier game for sure, and I hope I never play it again. And then that was it for Mega Man Classic, officially for years and years and years and years. And then they're like, oh, we're making Mega Man 9. And everyone is like, what the hell are you making Mega Man 9 for? Because at this point, the Mega Man X series had been run into the ground. They tried to revive it with an RPG. That didn't work. The Mega Man Legends series was canceled. There was like the Battle Network series had tried to do the Pokemon thing on the Game Boy Advance. And we had whatever Star Force was and like Mega Man Zero, and Mega Man 9, eventually, they said was, okay, we're going to go back to the last Mega Man game that everybody agrees was good, and we're just going to do a game like that. And unfortunately, instead of understanding that Mega Man like 3 and 5 were very good and worth revisiting that style of game, they went all the way back to Mega Man 2. So we now have a version of Mega Man. It's done up with 8-bit NES graphics, but you can't slide and you can't charge. And you know what? It's actually really, really good. I actually really love Mega Man 9. I loved it at the time, obviously, because it was just such a weird and cool thing to have a new 8-bit Mega Man game. But as the years went on and the rose-tinted glasses kind of came off, going back and playing 9 now, I do kind of hate the Fortress stages. The Robot Master stages are all really good, and there's one or two spots in the Fortress that I just loathe, but the rest of the game is really solid. It's also one of the hardest Mega Man games. It's easily harder than anything else I've got placed in the S or A tier, and which makes it very, very rewarding. I think a version of this game where you could slide would basically be perfect and would be S tier. So Mega Man 9 was a big success. And they're like, okay, let's do Mega Man 10 now. In the same style, the same 8-bit style. And Mega Man 9, originally I would have called it an S-tier game, and then over replays over the years, I pulled it back to A-tier. I realized I didn't really like it as much as I thought I did. I have the opposite opinion of Mega Man 10, because when Mega Man 10 first came out, I really didn't like it very much. And I think I would have placed it in like D tier here. But going back to replay it now, I feel like I've come around on it. You know what? I think I can place 10 above these guys languishing in the middle C tier. Here's the problem with 10. Is the Robot Masters in a Mega Man game, there's two ways to fight them. You either go in and learn the boss fight. You learn all their attacks and learn how to dodge and learn where to stand and learn when to shoot, learn when to charge, learn when to slide. Well, not slide, because you can't slide in 10 for whatever reason. You can do it that way. And there has to be at least one Robot Master in the game that can be easily defeated that way. And there typically is. Or, you go into the boss fight with the proper weapon, and then the boss is weak to that weapon, and you just annihilate them in 7 or 8 shots. In every Mega Man game prior to this, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, I'm thinking like maybe Dive Man is an exception, like bosses that are really difficult to hit with their weakness. The bosses are so weak to a certain weapon that you don't have to learn the fight. It's a knowledge checkpoint, not an execution checkpoint. In Mega Man 10, all of the weapons are way too creative. They all have this kind of secondary functionality where you can like climb walls or like get different trajectories on your shot, depending on whether you're on the ground or in the air. It's just way too much. And you have to use those secondary properties to hit the boss properly and attack them with their weakness. And it makes you learn the boss fight, all of the boss fights, whether or not you have the right weapon. To the point where it's almost not worth learning what the boss weaknesses are. You might as well just fight them all with your regular Mega Buster. Also, the Fortress stages in 10 are real rough. Like, I feel like they made 9, and they're like, well, 9 was really hard. People seem to like it. Let's make a game that's even harder now. But the problem with making a Mega Man game really hard is the levels just have spikes absolutely everywhere, and there's just death traps every 6 steps, and the bosses are... There's too much in Mega Man 10, and it's rough to go through. There was a period of time where I played it a couple times in a row over the course of a week, and I did get to enjoy myself a lot more with it, which is why it's climbed up to this point on the list. But I can see why the series didn't continue after that point anymore. So for years and years again, the Mega Man series is laying fallow. We're not releasing any other games. Then they said we're going to release Mega Man 11, and everyone's like, is it just going to be an 8-bit game again? It's like, no. We're going to do a new art style, but it's going to be in HD graphics. We're calling it Mega Man 11. So this game's only a couple of years old. 4, maybe 5 years old at this point. And it's excellent. I got to put Mega Man 11 all the way up in the A tier. I definitely think it's better than 9. Ooh, you know what? I might enjoy it more than 6. Like, I'm sitting here right now recording this, I'm thinking, do I want to play 6 or do I want to play 11? And you know what? I kind of want to play 11. So the first thing about 11 is that they've given back Mega Man all his functionality. He can slide, he can charge. And they've retooled the boss fights where you no longer need to learn the Robot Master fights whether or not you have the weakness. If you have the weakness, you're going to win. But they added a new system that I was skeptical about, but after I got my hands on the game, I decided I liked it. Because a lot of Mega Man games tried to get really experimental around the time of Mega Man 7 and 8, and then a bunch of the X series. They just tried a million different things and nothing stuck. So when I heard, oh, we're having a new gameplay system, never before seen in Mega Man, I was like, oh, here we go. But the system works like this. You've got like a magic gear, and if you turn the gear one way, you slow down time in the level. And if you turn the gear the other way, you supercharge whatever weapon you have. And both of these are mapped to different buttons, and you have them from the beginning of the game, and they're an infinite resource. They don't run out. You can only use them for a short period of time, and then after you use it, it takes a couple seconds for it to recharge, but only a couple seconds, to the point where you can basically count on using the gear on every single screen of the game if you really want to. And both gears get used constantly. In fact, half of the Robot Masters have the power gear, and half of the Robot Masters have the speed gear, which is really cool. Nice little touch. Also, this game introduced a functionality that I can't believe Mega Man 8 didn't have on the PlayStation. Well, no, Mega Man 8 would have predated a DualShock controller on the PlayStation, I guess. But they mapped the 8 Robot Master weapons to the 8 directions of your right thumbstick. So you can swap weapons without having to go into a menu and without having to tap R or L a whole bunch of times and cycle through weapons. You can instantly switch from any weapon to any weapon with one button press. And when I was learning Mega Man 11, I was swapping weapons constantly. It felt great. So yeah, this game was a slam dunk, and I really hope they get around to making Mega Man 12, because as of now, this is what the classic series looks like, more or less. So I got some spin-off games and some fan games and stuff down here that I'm going to also rank on this list. The first one, I'm kind of cheating here. I'm cheating because this actually represents 2 games. Because way back in the 90s, I don't remember the name of the company, but somebody got the PC rights to release a version of Mega Man on DOS. And instead of just porting Mega Man to DOS, they made a brand new Mega Man game from the ground up. You've probably seen this. If you haven't, I would look it up on YouTube. Mega Man DOS. It's a trip. And then there's a sequel to Mega Man for DOS called Mega Man 3. I don't know why it's only Mega Man 1 and Mega Man 3. If I had to guess, I would assume this game came out around the time Mega Man 3 came out on the NES. And that was the hot new game at the time, and maybe they just wanted a box. Because the box, it's original artwork on the box. I know you can't see on the tiny little thumbnail here, but the artwork is clearly supposed to be reminiscent of the NES box. It's very strange. These games are a trip, man. If you ever get your hands on them, I do recommend trying them out. They are weird historical artifacts. They're not good, and you won't enjoy playing them. And I cannot, in good conscience, put them any higher than D tier. But something about... I just can't bring myself to put it down on the F tier. There's something about it. Just this scrappy little indie developer guy who's, hey man, I got these rights. They fell in my lap, and I don't know what to do with them. I'm going to try to make a Mega Man game from the ground up. It's clearly a labor of love. You know what? Let's make everybody mad. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put Mega Man DOS at the top of D tier. How do you like that? Oh, you don't like that? I didn't think you would. I do recommend trying them out if you can get your hands on them, if you can get them on DOSBox or something. They're a trip, and we're going to move on now to the only Mega Man game to get an official remake. This game came out on the PSP, and it's a remake of the original Mega Man called Mega Man Powered Up. This is just a cool game. This is just a very, very cool game. So it's the original Mega Man. You fight the original Mega Man Robot Masters. They have a couple of extra Robot Masters to bring the total up to 8 because the first game only had 6 for whatever reason. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the B tier. I think this can live right here in between 4 and 10. I think that's pretty fair. The cool thing about Powered Up is just how much content there is. It's only as long as the original Mega Man, plus 2 extra Robot Master levels, but like once you defeat a Robot Master, you get the option to play as them. So the game has lots of playable characters. So there's Mega Man, you also unlock Proto Man and Roll, so that's 3 plus 8 is like 76 playable characters. And some of the Robot Masters are really fun to play as, and some of them are like a big chore, and some of them are like a fun challenge. Like, they really run the gamut. So there's a lot of content and a lot to do here. And I think the thought at the time was that if this game had sold well, they were going to continue making Powered Up games for the rest of the series, like Mega Man 2 Powered Up, etc. That ended up not happening, which is too bad, because I really think that there is gas in this tank, in this idea. I really liked the little chibi art style they went with. I really think the game was cute. I like how Roll, if you played as her, she can't use Robot Master weapons, but she uses a broom to hit enemies, kind of like Zero's saber from the X series. It was just nice having a melee character as an option in the game. So, very, very cool. I wish they would release this on Steam or something, because it's kind of just laying in the dustbin of history sitting on the PSP. So now we're going to descend into the realm of fan games. There are, hold on, I googled this. I just googled this. There are 16 quadrillion Mega Man fan games. There are a lot. If you commit to playing Mega Man fan games, you can start a YouTube channel tomorrow, be playing Mega Man fan games until you are old and gray. And I've played lots and lots of them. And they're almost universally bad. But there are a few good ones, and I do want to give a shout out to the ones that I think are really good. The first one is a game called Rockman 7 Famicom version. This is a demake of Mega Man 7. So they took Mega Man 7 as a base, and they asked themselves, what would this game look like if it was an NES game and not an SNES game? And you know what? It's better. It's better. Still not amazing, but I think top of C tier is a really good place for Mega Man 7, the demake. One of the things they do in Mega Man 7, the original version, you fought 4 Robot Masters, then had like a midway stage, then you fought the other 4. And the demake doesn't split them up like that. You have all 8 available from the start, which is nice because Springman is a really fun fight. It's a really good place to start the game. This version of the game has smaller sprites. Mega Man is smaller because he's using his NES sprite rather than his SNES one, which means you can see more of the screen. Mega Man 7 is really cramped in some of its boss arenas, and this demake, because of the smaller sprites and larger rooms, you've got some room to breathe in these boss fights. So some of the boss fights from 7 that were just awful are actually palatable now. Are actually pretty decent. It's still a rough game. It is a fan game. I don't know who made it. And so it's not terrific, but it is free. It's available for download. If you like Mega Man games, you might consider checking it out. It is my preferred way to play 7. And of course, a couple years later, I think a different person, I don't think it was the same person that made 7, made Rockman 8, the Famicom version, which is the same thing. It's a demake of Mega Man 8. And again, it's better than 8, but it still has a lot of the same problems because it still has like the jump, slide levels. And what was it about? There was a fortress level in this game that I really don't think worked well. I can't remember now. But I think splitting these two games up on either side of the one Game Boy game I'm including is fair. I do believe I've read online that someone, I don't know if it's still in development, but someone was doing a demake of Mega Man and Bass. And I don't know if that will ever come to light. I know there's like a trailer or something you could watch on YouTube. I guess we'll wait and see if that's becomes worth playing. It is kind of cool that you can play all of the Mega Man games 1 to 10 in the NES graphics. I do think that's a cool thing. And yeah, this next one is kind of strange. Yeah, this next one's real weird. So this was for Mega Man 25th anniversary, I want to say. Another fan game that somebody had made that Capcom kind of canonized. They kind of took the game and said, okay, we're going to release this on our official site. So the game got distributed for free across the internet by Capcom. And it is Street Fighter Cross Mega Man. So the conceit of this game is that you play as Mega Man, but instead of fighting Robot Masters, you fight Street Fighter bosses. So you fight Ryu and Chun-Li and Dhalsim and a couple others. This game's very interesting, and it's definitely worth playing. But big jank. Whew, big jank. The game would really benefit from another level of polish and QA. I think there are places where the graphics don't really read very well. You can't really parse what's happening on screen. So going through and redoing some of the graphics to make the foreground elements that you interact with a little more contrasty would not go amiss. Also, it's very clear that the people who made this game really valued the boss fights. And I can see why, because the boss fights are all Street Fighter characters. This was around the time of Street Fighter 4, which has the big flashy super moves for all the characters. And in fact, the boss music in this game, when you're fighting a boss, is an 8-bit chiptune version of Street Fighter 4's main theme, which is very cool. The problem with fighting Street Fighter bosses is that in a fighting game, reaction times can be on the span of just a single-digit number of frames. And that's fair when you're fighting another human being. It's less fair when you're fighting a computer. And so the computer opponents in this game, some of the Robot Master fights, have attacks that just cannot be dodged without luck. Which is too bad, because I really think some of the boss fights have a lot of good ideas, but it's just not cool when you're fighting Ryu and you can never tell if he can just instantly, on a dime and with no warm-up, just do his hurricane kick in your direction across the screen, and you don't know if it's the fast version or the slow version until it's already hit you. The other problem with this game is that the stages were not given the same amount of love as the boss fights, to the point where they really feel like, let's just rush and throw like some screens together and who cares, because people are just going to want to get to the boss fights. Well, I care. I care a lot, actually. I really like Mega Man stages, and there's just not a lot here for me to sink my teeth into. Where am I going to put this? It's got to go pretty low, if I'm being honest. I'd rather play the 7 and 8 D-makes. I think I'd rather play Mega Man 1. So the question is, am I putting it at the back of C tier or the front of D tier? I think. You know what? I think I do have to be charitable and put it up here. The difference between Street Fighter Cross Mega Man and Mega Man DOS, both of which are indie games developed by somebody who clearly loves Mega Man a lot. The difference is this is a free project that was distributed, and this was a commercial product that didn't quite live up to the bar. I think that's I mean, play this. It's free. You might as well. But don't go expecting the sun and the moon. The next fan game I have is one called Mega Man 2.5D. This is a cool one, actually. It has the 8-bit NES graphics, but it's done in a 3D engine, so everything is this, like, 2.5D style, where you're still on one plane of movement, but you'll sometimes move around like 90-degree angles, and there'll be background elements that you can see, and sometimes interact with. The whole game is pretty solid. I don't think there's any point in this game that I dread playing. So placing it, I mean, B tier seems fair. I'll put it ahead of 10 in that regard. What really stops this game from being special, in my opinion, is the 8 Robot Masters are from other Mega Man games. So, like, you go and fight Snake Man, and Shadow Man, and Quick Man, and, like, yeah, cool, it's nice seeing the classic stages in that, like, style that they've brought to the table here. That's really cool, but I really would have preferred seeing original Robot Masters. You know, like, they did creative things with what already existed, but, like, I've already played Starman's level a lot. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think this game could be much improved if it had unique assets rather than just reusing Robot Masters we know and love. That leaves 2 more fan games here. And this next pick might be a little controversial, and it might just be because the game is relatively new. I've only been playing it for about a year, but man, I've been playing it a lot. Is Mega Man Rock and Roll. This fan game, just watch the placement. It's going all the way up in S tier. Not only is this fan game better than some of the classic games, it's better than some of the really good classic games. The team that made this game has a laser-focused appreciation for what makes those classic Mega Man games good. And it's polished, and it's really, really hard. It's one of the most, if not the most difficult Mega Man game. But it's a really fair difficulty. It's rooting for you. It wants you to win, and you will win. It's not like Mega Man 10, where you have to really grind out the boss fights to learn them. No, in Rock and Roll, you might die once or twice on a boss fight, even if you bring the weakness, but then you'll prevail and move on. And there's no levels that are just a slog. The main trick of this game is, like Mega Man and Bass, you have 2-player characters. You play as Mega Man, you play as Roll. Mega Man has his charge shot and his slide. Roll has a double jump. Mega Man has Rush Coil and Rush Jet. Roll can fly around using Beat. But instead of picking a character and playing the game as them, you pick a character before each stage. So you can play some stages as Mega Man and some stages as Roll. And it's clear that some stages and some boss fights are easier with a double jump, and some stages and some boss fights are easier with a charge shot. So it's really cool. And then in the end of the game, going into the Fortress stages, where the game gets really, really hard, there are some really cool and clever areas where you have to control both characters at once that I had not seen done in a Mega Man game before. It's not a tag team kind of thing like in some of the later X games. You kind of have to play the game and see the boss fights and to appreciate the design that goes into them. This game is phenomenal, and I think it's a really good indication of we've reached a point where fans now understand better what makes a Mega Man game really, really good than some of the people who made them and were trying to figure it out back in the 90s. And if you want to get a taste of that, if you want to get a taste of what kind of creative things people can do with a Mega Man engine, there is the fan-made Mega Man Maker, which is the last game I'm going to place on this list. This is basically like the Super Mario Maker for Mega Man. I honestly think Capcom, there's got to be legal issues and stuff. Clearly Capcom knows about the project, and they haven't given them the C&D. Capcom is usually pretty good about fan projects. It's one of the reasons there are so many Mega Man fan games and fan communities out there making stuff, whereas like Nintendo will crush Mario fan games pretty early on. Capcom loves their fans. It's pretty clear. But I do wish that it was possible for Capcom to acknowledge Mega Man Maker and give it some kind of support. Like, hey, you guys are doing good work, so we're not going to pay you to be a development team, but we'll give you our blessing, and we're not going to you can put our stamp on it, and maybe we'll host the server or something. I don't know. When this first came out, it was in a really bad state because at that time I was playing a lot of Super Mario Maker, and the difference is Mario has a lot of really interesting level options. It's kind of what separates a Mario platformer from a Mega Man platformer, is Mario has a lot of movement options and a lot of different things to interact with inside of a level that can be constructed in a lot of different ways. It's one of the things that makes Mario Maker compelling. Whereas Mega Man is more about the combat challenges and equipping weapons and things. There's less for him to interact with in an individual level. So early on, Mega Man Maker was really just this pedestrian stream of, hey, fight Quick Man, but this time it's over to Spiketies. That's kind of all it was. But the game's gotten really good development. It's gotten excellent support. They're continuing to push out content. I think we've got a new version in a couple of months coming up, 1.8 I think we're on now. Every time a new version drops, I take it back for a spin. I play it for a few days, and it's pretty good. You can boot this up, and it's relatively easy to find a set of levels at your difficulty level that you prefer that are worth playing. They have good community tools, both in the game and out of the game, to kind of filter out a lot of the garbage. So there are puzzle levels, there are troll levels, there are just boss rush levels, there's lots of different options. There's 4 different player characters in this game, lots and lots of different weapons, and they added in, over time, a lot of level functionality, a lot of gimmicks that can interact in different ways. They've added functionality to a lot of weapons. For example, the Mega Man series, most games have a shield weapon, where just a thing rotates around Mega Man and it absorbs shots or something. Well, Mega Man Maker realized it's kind of dumb to have 5 different shields, so let's give each shield like its own property. So the skull barrier, I can equip it, and now I can walk on spikes and be safe. So I actually really enjoy playing some of the puzzle levels that come out. I've played a couple of the Kaizo levels and done some troll levels, but there's also just a lot of good, solid Mega Man levels. The only reason I'm going to put this in the B tier, you know what? Right above Powered Up is appropriate, because Powered Up also had a level editor that never really got the love it needed, and it kind of feels like Mega Man Maker is the resolution of that promise from back in the day. I think that's an appropriate place for it. This could easily be an A or even an S tier Mega Man game if it had some way to design your own Robot Master, and it doesn't. There's a lot of really cool things you can do by taking an existing Robot Master and putting them in a new arena that can change the fight a lot. But there's only so much you can do. And I've fought Metal Man a million times, and I fought Napalm Man a million times, and I wish there was some way that you could design your own Robot Master for Mega Man Maker. And I wish there was some way that a single creator could package some number of their stages together as though they were a Mega Man game you could play as its own thing. Like, there's functionality where you can unlock weapons and things inside of a single level, but there's no functionality for, say, unlocking a weapon in one level and then taking it to another level, which is kind of the heart and soul of the classic Mega Man series. And that's it. Looks like we got a nice bell curve. This is how you know a tier list is really accurate, when you got a nice bell curve. There's only a couple at the top and a couple at the bottom, and my tier lists almost always look exactly the opposite of this. I almost always dump everything in S and F and like one thing in C. So that's how you know this list is correct. And you can go to sleep tonight with that knowledge, with my blessing. Thank you so much for watching. Why don't you all just go play some Mega Man now? Why not?